Let's talk about mindfulness of emotions now. Okay, I want to share a personal story to start us on this one, maybe to help sort of familiarize you with how these things arise and why we get caught up, because they're so compelling. They do take us over. So my dad was a World War II refugee from Estonia. He was born in Estonia and he landed in Germany in a refugee camp and was there for many years. And it was a difficult time, and there was a lot of they were starving and scared, his family and his brother and sister, but they had fun like little kids do. And they made it to the US, and he assimilated to the main culture here. And he married a wonderful woman, and he became a workaholic, really. So he was a real American. Now, based on the conditions of his formative years, I guess you would call it, his life experiences, his family, his DNA, his personality. He was a guy. My dad was a guy who could get lost in his emotions. I mean, he was either sky high or in a black hole. That was the two modes that Dad could exist in. And I think psychologists or therapists would say he was like manic depressive or bipolar or something like that. Yeah. But he was a good man. And I watched as a young person, right? I realized, I learned, I watched and learned, and I internalized that experiencing emotions is quite dangerous. Emotions make you miserable or unnaturally active. So I developed ways to avoid my emotions, very clever ways. And it was very helpful for me at the time, right? As young people, we do what we can to cope, but it created these residual behaviors that are, I would say, were pretty harmful at some point. Maybe not obviously, but internally over time can really do some damage, make you very weary and uncomfortable in your own skin for no good reason. Well, it turns out it's because emotions actually aren't dangerous, right? In fact, running away from emotions is dangerous. In fact, sensing your emotions safely is an essential part of being happy, right? And there's two modes, which, well, I'll mention that in a moment. So what is what is an emotion? Who could define what is an emotion? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's right. It is. It is an inner feeling. Thank you. Um, I'll elaborate a little bit on it, because there's a couple of things that are so important in the definition of an emotion. So it's an inner feeling. So feeling meaning it's a sensation. It's a sensation, a feeling, something you actually feel. And inner meaning it's inside the body. So it's actually a physical sensation. And then it's fleeting. It's a fleeting physical sensation. So that inner feeling, it comes and it goes. Even though when you're caught up in it, it feels like it's there forever. So this inner feeling, this fleeting physical sensation it's created by your body to provide input about what's going on around you. Okay, so my next question for the brave person, why do we have emotions? Like, what are they for? That's right. They are so we can externalize what's inside. So yeah, they're physical indicators, these designed over millions of years to protect us. So yeah, it has to do with the external environment, what's going on around us. So take, for example, because remember, we're 6 million years old and we've been in the cushy industrial world for just a couple hundred. And we've been in, farm world for just a, couple tens of thousands of years. So our primary system, so take, for example, fear. Fear is an emotion. And if you're living a few million years ago and you're walking along and you see a shape on the ground that looks like a snake, it triggers this emotion of fear, this feeling of fear, which you can actually kind of feel it in your chest. And this primal feeling propels you to jump away even before you can assess properly if it's a vine or something else, right? Because you don't have time. You need to act quickly. That internal system is protecting you from that external threat, okay? Nowadays, we don't walk in the wild with snakes, usually. Most people don't. And we don't even, we have a lock on our door. We don't even live in a straw hut with no door. We can lock up at night and, generally, we're usually not at risk of grave physical harm. But we have this emotional system hardwired into our bodies, and it's always on. It's always on surveillance, right? So we have to be aware of how it's acting on us, what it's doing to us. We have to know this in order to manage it. This next point I want to make is really, really important. And it's so cool. Emotions, these physical body sensations, last 60 to 90 seconds in the body. The organism the capacity is 60 to 90 seconds for any emotion. They're short-lived physical sensations. It's to get you out of trouble. Okay? The problem arises when our thoughts get involved. And the thoughts feed the emotions like adding fuel to a fire. Okay? So our practice is when an emotion comes through us, we watch it and we ride it out. And this is something we develop over time. So number one, you got to start to learn to appreciate what's happening in your body instead of being a brain on legs, just walking around thinking about things all the time. And number two, we practice letting go of the thoughts so we can ride it out. We can try riding it out. Like, can you stay with this uncomfortable physical sensation? Is this heat or this vibration in the chest? Can you sit it out for 60 to 90 seconds? If you can't, and this has happened to me on many occasions, it feels so unbearable, you just move on. You stop paying attention to it. You move on. You distract yourself somehow. You can always try it again later. But if you can stay with it, do it, because that's where your freedom lives. 60 to 90 seconds. This is a list of some common human emotions, right? This is some of the complex stuff we feel. Terrified, tense, silly, satisfied, loving, nervous, inadequate, right? It's a good list. And some of these emotions, they actually even cross over each other. You can get like combinations, right? You're feeling angry but motivated, right? And each of us is so different that some people can feel some of these emotions, and other people have never felt some of these things, just based on the conditions of your life, you know. Like I know people who've never felt jealous, or it's such a mild emotion. So these emotions are really a gold mine of information for us if we don't get lost in them, right? And I'll share more on this later, but let's move to the primary emotions. So here's the complex emotions. The primary emotions we have 4. And the scientists have determined this based on research with infants. Mad, sad, glad, and afraid. For instance, if you're annoyed, right? You're mad, you're angry. If you're feeling lonely, it's a form of sadness. If you're excited and looking forward to something, it's a form of glad. And if you're feeling lost, for instance, it's a fear, not knowing where you are. So we can track the emotions down to these 4. And the really interesting thing I point out here is that each one of us has our go-to emotion. And this is nice to know about yourself. So, you know, for instance, I'm a worrier. You know, I'm a pretty chill person, but I do worry about things all the time. So afraid is my dominant one. My husband is also a pretty chill guy, but, you know, he gets indignant at things. So his go-to is mad, right? So you can trace your feelings back, the ones that keep coming, and find the one that's dominant. And similarly, there's one in the 4 that we all avoid, right? Because of the way we were raised. For instance, in my family, you know, being angry was completely inappropriate. So I find it very hard to express anger, you know, or everybody has, you know, one of these that's not easily expressed. Emotions and thoughts have this very circular relationship, and it's where you can't really put one into one basket and the other in the other basket, because they're so intimately intertwined. So thoughts can trigger emotions, and emotions can create thoughts. For instance, you can get a thought that then triggers a feeling, right? You can, I don't know, think about your granddaughter, and it brings up a feeling of happiness. Or you can get a feeling that triggers a thought. For instance, maybe you hear like a loud crash outside the window, and it brings up a feeling of fear. And then a thought comes into your mind that it must be a car accident, right? So so you can see like where this circular relationship goes, right? Like our emotions and thoughts are so intimately connected with each other. And then we have these crazy imaginations, and they feed on each other. And in regular life, we're not out expending our energy scavenging for food. We go to the Giant. We have all this time to think. And so this feedback loop happens on a chronic scale. The idle mind is a devil's playground, right? So like when somebody doesn't get back to your email or your text, it's so easy for the creative mind to go off and latch on to the negative thought. Then your emotions get charged up and the cycle continues. And it's like our thoughts are just kerosene. They keep feeding these emotions. And some people drown in their emotions. I have friends who just get very overwhelmed very quickly. And then there's other people, I'm in the other camp. We cut it off really soon, so we try not to feel. And people use all these tricks, right? They go eat something, they go have a glass of wine, they look things up on the internet. They run away because they don't know how to be with the emotions. Most people fear that they will not be able to survive a bad emotion, an unpleasant emotion. But the main issue is that you can't close yourself off or run away from the bad emotions and then hope to have the good ones, the joy, the happiness, the peace, in as rich a way. It's impossible to have one without the other, is what I mean. Like, our emotional system is too primal. It's not clever. The emotional system is our reptilian brain. So if we want to feel happiness and joy, we have to be willing to feel anger and fear. It's a package deal. It's like, the left and the right. If you don't have the right, you can't have the left. Day and night, up and down. They coexist, the bad emotions and the good ones. So you have to know how to take care of the unpleasant stuff. You have to know how to feel bad skillfully, and then you can feel really good. So how do we do this? How do we take care of these emotions? Basically, we sense the emotions in our body. We become a scientist. Where do the emotions show up in the body? For example, when you get angry, next time you get angry, where is it? Is it like this sort of feeling in my throat? Is it like a tightness in the chest? Are my fists getting hot, and like, where does that anger show up? Physically. So you're like a scientist. All you're looking for is physical sensations. It's a wonderful practice because it keeps you from getting lost in it right away, right? But it's your primary job as a meditator, is to find out where everything shows up in your body. If you're feeling sad and, the cookie, my cookie always reaching. What does that sadness feel like? Like, does my body feel kind of heavy? Do my eyelids feel like they're drooping maybe? Or is there a lump in my throat? Like, where is it showing up? So you get familiar with your own body's particular response, because everyone's different, right? And then you practice, you see if you can ride it through for 60 seconds. Sometimes it goes in 30 seconds. Sometimes it's so fast. If you just pay attention to it, give it that room it needs. I have a really cool chart I want to share with you. I saw this, it was a revelation for me. So these scientists in Scandinavia polled they had about 10,000 people fill in a chart of where they feel these different emotions on their body. So if you were in this experiment, you had a outline of a human body, and then you'd put red dots or blue dots or where you feel that emotion. They collected all that data and they compiled it in this gorgeous image. I look at shame, it kind of looks like Spider-Man, but wow, when you've done something wrong and you're so embarrassed or ashamed, you feel that burning in your eyes. Love, of course, makes me laugh. But you can see how the strong, a lot of the emotions land in the chest, right? Even the quieter ones. A lot of things are felt in the chest, in the head, in the neck. Anger is very strong in the fists, which makes so much sense, right? So we'll finish up with an exercise. Take one of these emotions for yourself, pick one out, and come up with a situation where you have felt that emotion. Make it something real easy, something that you feel often. So pick out a situation for yourself with one of these emotions, and then look at the image and get it in your head. And close your eyes or stare at the floor, whatever, get yourself focused, and think of the name of the emotion you picked and just say it to yourself. And then call up that situation into your mind where you felt the emotion. Maybe you can repeat to yourself thoughts that you had, or if it involves somebody else, maybe things that they said, things that you saw. Call up all the details of the situation. Sort of pumping and priming yourself to feel that emotion again by remembering it. And now while you have that situation in your mind, go ahead and check in. How do you experience that emotion in your body? Where does it show up for you physically? Is there like a pressure a little bit somewhere? Tightness? Is there a tingling, a heaviness, some vibration? And if you don't notice anything, maybe add a little fuel to the situation. Make it more of whatever it is somehow with your imagination. And see if you can bring up any sensations. A little quivering in the chest. Maybe in the jaw, something in the jaw. Maybe a heaviness or a lightness. And then try and now to finish it, try to get your attention away from the story now. And if you have any body sensations, keep your focus on them and see if you can feel as the physical sensations subside. Just putting your attention on your body. And come back to the group. Yeah, we've got to finish up, but it's a practice. And I'll say that for me in the beginning, it was very hard for me to sense things. And I have a very dear friend who it was hard for her because she sensed way too much and just got flooded. So but if you apply mindfulness in your daily life, when you're washing the dishes, when you're walking from one room to the next, and you're sensing into these different places on your body, unconnected to emotions, you get in touch with what's happening inside the organism. And you start to notice that when things come up, they do actually show up in the body. They do show up. And getting familiar with this physical experience, it's a way to anchor yourself. It's a way to anchor yourself. It's like, if there's a big storm out in the ocean and you tie yourself to the mast of a ship so you don't blow away. That's what it is to touch into where things are showing up in your body. That's the practice. And I'll add the caveat, of course, when things are really overwhelming, it's appropriate, if it's too much to be sensing into your body, it's appropriate to turn away and then come back later. Because believe me, at times it can be too much. But in the normal course of a day, it's the place to find your wisdom, really. But you have to remember that you have a body, and you have to keep your attention in your body. And this is the practice.